Thank you. For those of you that are new here, thank you for joining us. DCIOS, we usually run every second Tuesday of the month. We did have a speaker back out this month, but luckily we got two great speakers lined up for you. And before I kick it off with them, I want to put out a reach and let you guys know that we do need a speaker for September. So if you're available and look to give a talk, we have so many new topics coming out from WWDC, and we'd love to get someone in there next month to kind of teach us about some of that stuff that's coming out. We do have another presentation coming up in November with Craig Clayton, which I'm really excited about. So that'll be on SwiftUI, and really hope everyone reaches out and comes out to that as well. But yes, if you are available, let us know. Give us a shout out on DC iOS on Twitter. We have our link in the chat down there. And then Scott also just posted the YouTube link where we post videos from these presentations every month. Yeah, and that's it that I have. Scott, do you have anything?
No, that's it. Just, yeah, so if you're interested in speaking, yeah, reach out to myself, Joseph, or Lara, who is not here at the moment. But yeah, just reach out to us. And yeah, otherwise, hope you enjoy tonight's meetup and just keep on coming.
Yeah, and like I said, we have two speakers today. So we'll start off with Vui. So she'll give us a talk on safely unwrapping optionals, and then we'll switch over to John afterwards. But Vui, you want to kick it off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Should we go ahead and do a quick plug for 360 iDev?
Yeah, go for it. I did fail to mention that we do have Vui and I will both be presenting at 360 iDev. Last month I did present or give a 20% discount to everyone here. So I'll post that again in the link if anyone's interested in joining that conference. But yeah, that'll be this coming Sunday, right? 16th?
Yeah, it's
right.
The workshops are happening on Sunday, and then the talks start Tuesday through Wednesday, and it's a lot of fun. I know it's going to be different this year because it's online, but I've attended for several years already, in person, and it's just always a great community. One thing that I like about it is it's small. I mean, it's really small this year, but even in years past, I've also attended like WWDC before, and even though everyone's like, oh, you got to go to WWDC, but 360 is just a smaller community, and people are friendly, and you actually have a chance to get to know more people. So if you haven't had a chance to attend an iOS conference this year, I would highly recommend attending this one. And now the tickets are cheaper, you don't have to travel, so I hope it's more accessible to a lot more people.
Sure. Yeah, check out their website. It's just 360iDev.com. I'll post a 20% discount here, but they also have an option for people that aren't able to afford the conference this year is to pay what you can. So it basically ends up being a donation. You can pay $10, you can pay $100, and either way you'll get a ticket. So whether you want to use 20% from us, pay full price, or just go pay whatever you can and grab a ticket. That's on their website. You can definitely have no excuse not to attend this year. So we'd love to have you guys there.
Yep. All right. Well, I guess I can start my presentation. Okay, share screen. Okay. Then. Okay, so can everyone, oops, oh, sorry, hold on. Let me start from the beginning. Okay. All right, can everyone see my screen and hear me okay?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, cool. So like Joseph said, my name is Vui Nguyen, and I'm going to talk to you today about why safely unwrapping optionals is really not optional. So I volunteer as a lead for the Women Who Code Colorado chapter and also the mobile Slack community. I'm currently an iOS engineer at Jack Henry and Associates, and an avid fisherwoman. And if you can't tell already, I'm based out of Denver, Colorado. So what I'm going to cover today is what are optionals and why must optionals be safely unwrapped. I'm going to give a brief demo where I show what happens when optionals are force unwrapped. Bad things happen. And I'm going to show you how to safely unwrap optionals via optional binding and guard. Okay, so first off, what are optionals? In Swift, an optional is a variable that could have a value of nil at runtime. So nil is a lack of a value or when a value is not set. What optionals do is they allow you to safely handle variables where the value could be nil at runtime. And the format of an optional variable is you use let if you're defining a constant, or var is for variables that could change value. And so why must optionals be safely unwrapped? So you need to check for the existence of a value before you use that variable. Because if you use variables that are nil, that can cause program crashes. And that's very bad for user experiences. So, and you know, what you don't want to do is force unwrap an optional, and that's using an optional without first checking to see if a value exists. So here's my demo. I created this playground with different ways of unwrapping optionals, and I can put this in the meetup page as well. You can check it out. So what you have here is I created a dictionary with a location and weather. So it's supposed to simulate, say you're building a weather app and you're making 2 calls to the server, right? You're making one call to get your current location, and then based on that, you make another call to a weather server to get the weather data for your location. Now, at any point in either of those calls, you could potentially get a nil value. And so that's what this dictionary represents. Now you notice one of the entries has nil for the key, and another one has nil for the value. So pay attention to that because that's going to come up later. And as far as the valid entries, I picked those cities because I used to work on a project called Simply E, which is an ebook reader app for libraries. And these were on a distributed team, and these were the cities that my coworkers and I lived in. So the first example is what happens when you force unwrap optionals. So in that code snippet, we are looping through the location weather dictionary and printing a string with the weather report for that location. And you know, if you look further down, you see it's great when you're printing out the data that has the valid values, but as soon as you hit an entry that has nil, rather than handling that gracefully, the program just crashes. And so this is why you don't want to force unwrap optionals. This is a bad thing. Why won't it? Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. It won't let me go to my next slide. Okay, there we go. It skipped something. Okay, there we go. Now we're back. So what I want to show you a better way is to safely unwrap optionals using optional binding. So we're looping through the location weather dictionary again, but this time what we're doing is we're taking the location variable and then checking to see if there's a valid value and then binding it to the new variable valid location. And then we also take the weather variable, see if that has a valid value, and then binding it to valid weather. And we're still trying to print that string with the location and its weather. But what you notice is the string doesn't get printed until it passes both checks, okay? So you can start to sort of see there's some nested if statements there, gets a little bit messy, but the important thing, why am I having a trouble getting to the next slide? But the result is it's now printing out strings that have valid values for the dictionary entries, and it skips over the ones that had nils. So but the most important thing is now your program isn't crashing anymore. So this is getting better, right? So another way that we can safely unwrap optionals is using something called guard. And what guard does is when it encounters a nil, it exits out of the current program execution. So in this case, what it's doing is if it encounters a nil value in the dictionary entry, it will skip the rest of the execution of the for loop for that entry and go on to the next dictionary entry. And I kind of like this a little bit better stylistically. I think it looks a little bit cleaner. You don't have, the nested if statements. But the important thing is that it gives you the same results as the optional binding, right? It prints out the strings with the valid values, and it just skips the entries that has the nils. But most importantly, you still don't have a program crash. So this is what we want. This is better. But there are actually many other ways to unwrap optionals. According to Ray Winterlich, there are 7, and I can make these slides available, or at least this link available later. So if you want to learn more, go to this tutorial. So this is what we covered today. I talked about what optionals are, why they must be safely unwrapped. I gave a little demo showing bad things happening when they're force unwrapped, and 2 ways to safely unwrap optionals. So now you can safely unwrap those optionals. I don't want any of you to force unwrap optionals anymore, so go and send no more. Thanks, and does anyone have any questions?
Yes, what is your opinion on force unwrapping in unit tests or tests in general? And a lot of devs will go through, like, if it crashes in the unit test, it's fine, right? It's on production code, and that ultimately shows that there's an error. I personally like to go the route of like still safely unwrapping it, and then presenting some type of error to say like, why did this fail? Like,
yeah, because then you're adding like another unknown, right? If you're, because now you're like, well, did my test fail because I forced unwrapped this thing, or is it did it fail because of something else?
Sure.
So,
And I think a lot of times when I do see it, it's more on things such as like a URL, for example. If you're adding a string for a URL and initializing it that way, like most likely we're guaranteed to get a value back for that. So I'll see people force unwrap there, but Swiftland still picks it up, so it still bothers me. Like I still want that done nicely, but yeah.
I think my understanding, and if other people have an opinion, I'd like to hear it, is one of the few times it's okay to force unwrap an optional is if you don't want the program to continue anyways, if there's a nil, right? Like in the interface builder, right? Like if a certain view isn't available, the safe thing to do is to crash the app rather than continue. That's what I hear is like the only time it's okay to force unwrap an optional. But I mean, I'm interested in hearing what other people think are situations where that's okay.
Yeah, I think the other time I heard that it was okay is if, let's say, your app is very dependent on a specific feature, whether that may be a view, like the example you use, or let's say even an API. Like if that API isn't coming through, um, which again, I would show like a pop up that like that doesn't work. I make it let the user know like, oh, we're having an issue with the server or something. Uh,
Yeah.
but I've heard also from some devs that they would just go ahead and crash because that feature is like maybe whatever the main feature of the app. So if that's not working, the app is basically irrelevant. It's down, right? They just crash
Mm.
it. But yeah, I
I
am
don't
curious
know.
here
I
if
kind of
there's.
think that's a poor user experience,
I
though. Like,
agree. Yeah, I definitely think the users should know that's coming up. But if anyone else has any questions or opinions, I'd love to hear. You can put a check mark on your Zoom, and then we can unmute you and let you ask a question. Unless there's
stop
any
share.
Steve Sheets raising hand to talk. Let me Steve, let me unmute you. Sorry, I didn't see your comment.
Let's see. Who has a comment or question?
All right, can you unmute now, Steve?
Now I can. I couldn't figure out how to do it myself. The
I
only,
think you need an admin help there. That's all.
the only time I see consistently forced optionals being used is when you're using Interface Builder with your application and you drag an IB outlet over there, it comes across as a forced optional rather than using the exclamation point rather than the question. The assumption I assume there is that you really want the program to crash if the user interface elements don't match what you're expecting it to be there. That's the only time I've seen it in the code, and it's the only time I leave it alone because I always make it a question mark optional rather than verifying it. So you ask for ones that's a good case.
Yeah, that's definitely one I've heard of before as well.
Yeah, and I think that's why I like to do my views programmatically so I can avoid the interface builder issue. Did anyone else have any questions? You can check off the yes. All right. If there's no others, we can always, if you can think of anything, toss in the chat below, and then we can always come back to it at the end. But Louis, thank you so much for your presentation. Really saved us here at the end, trying to get a meetup put together for this month.
Pleasure. And to be honest, I had already given this lightning talk at another event. So that's when you pinged me and asked for talk, I'm like, oh, what have I already done before that I can kind of recycle? So I'm cheating a little bit, to be honest.
It's okay. We'll take it. The first time that we hear the presentation here, so we definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. So John also had a presentation set up for us for this month as well. We tried saving the meetup with 2 speakers because 2 is better than 1. So John, if you want to go ahead and get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and you can kick off your presentation.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Bowie. I have to admit, I'm doing this a bit of the same. I updated my presentation, but I've already given this topic a talk before, so.
Maybe we should have kept that quiet. That way
Yeah,
it
maybe.
seems more special, you know, like, oh, I stayed up all night to put this together.
Yeah, exclusive, iOS only.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so I'm John Lawrence, senior iOS developer at Capital One. I've been with Capital One for like 8 years now, so it's been a while, but it's been good. And tonight I want to share. Hopefully this is coming through. Let me move the video screen over a little. So yeah, so thanks for joining for this, and I want to share a little bit about effective error handling in Swift. So let's get started. What we'll cover tonight, just a brief history of errors and error handling in Swift. I want to go over what good error handling looks like, and then how to improve your error handling using protocols that Apple gives us for free. So we'll get started with the history. So Swift error handling, when it started out, Swift 1, we didn't get much. We got an error object that basically was a bridge for NS error. With that, you really just passed them around methods, just like Objective-C. It gave you Objective-C compatibility, but that was about the extent of the benefits we can say for it. And then in Swift 2 and 3, a proposal got introduced, giving us more of like, dare I say, a Java style handling for errors with throwing and trying and do catch blocks. So that helps. But also, it's overlooked often, but we got 3 protocols with that proposal that really help you give a more descriptive error, among other benefits, called localized error, custom NS error, and recoverable error. So we're going to go into those today as well. But first, I want to talk about good error handling. And to start out, let's talk about what it doesn't mean. Good error handling is not empty messaging. And by empty, I don't literally mean an empty string. I mean, if you give your user something that's meaningless, it's not good for you or the user, you as a developer or the user. So something like error 553, that doesn't mean anything to them. So that's not a great experience. And it's funny that we just talked about this a couple of minutes ago, but not crashing does not always equal a great experience. So I'm not taking anything away from the optional talk you just gave, Vui. I agree with you on the optionals, but like you had said, if you don't want program flow to continue, just crash, because there's unsafe situations that can occur. Like if you have a corrupt session, corrupt file system, things like that, you just need to start over. And then if you're missing UI pieces, you might accidentally allow behavior that shouldn't be allowed. Like say you're in a shopping cart and you really are trying to save this session instead of crash, but maybe you let someone place an order for an item that's out of stock by accident. That obviously would not be great. So things like that, it might just be best to start from scratch. What does make good error handling, I think, is just handle what you can. Would retrying a flaky API make it work? Are you missing some info that the user needs to validate? And then really, I think the biggest thing is being descriptive. Let the user know what's happening. Even if it's something you can't fix, just say, try again later. Sorry, this is happening. Like, it's nothing you did, that sort of thing. Going back to what I said earlier about error number, blah, 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 that's not really meaningful. And then provide alternatives to the user. So if applicable, like you might not be able to do this, but if you have a mobile website, direct them there if you get an error where you know your API is down or something's corrupt, et cetera, et cetera. And I think a really great protocol that has a really great error handling setup is the Codable protocol. If you've ever worked with this and you get an error message as a developer, you'll see that it has really good descriptions. It lets you know the keys that are missing. It lets you know what happened. And like these are developer facing messaging, but for one thing, it lets you know before you ship your code what's breaking. And also, even if it's developer facing, it still allows you to take those messages and then craft something more usable to your end users. So let's improve our errors with protocols. This is just a summary of these 3 protocols. Essentially, a localized error helps you describe the error in detail to your user. And localized means just that they are meant to be localized strings that you provide in this protocol. Custom NS error is basically a protocol that allows your error class object to act like an NS error without having to inherit from it. And then recoverable error is, we'll touch on that a little bit. It's pretty cool, but right now it's really only useful in Mac OS unless you do a little bit of lift to apply the same principles in iOS. But hopefully Apple brings us some more functionality there eventually. Localized error has 4 properties. We don't really look at help anchor on iOS, but it basically has a description, failure reason, and a recovery suggestion. So the description is a user-facing string that is a meaningful description. The failure reason, you can think of like a subtitle, like, hey, here's what happened. And then recovery suggestion is just that. If it applies, what's an action the user can take to recover from this situation? And they map to NS error values in that table I provided. So what this looks like in action, on the top left, you see I have a purchase error, and this just kind of goes back to that shopping cart analogy I gave. So let's say we have insufficient funds or out of stock, and we'll extend localized error. And they're all optional, so you don't have to provide, they're required, but they have default implementations. So you don't have to provide like failure reason. In this case, I didn't provide. But error description, you'll see like not enough funds, not enough items to complete the transaction. And then recovery suggestion, what do? Oh, well, if I have insufficient funds, you need to add X amount and try again. Or if you're out of stock, just give us a week to restock, which is a little slow in today's world. And then on the right, you'll see a simple function to make a purchase, which just subtracts a price from a set amount of funds that you have. So we try to make a purchase for an item that costs more, $125, and we only have $100, and we have this in a do catch block. So we cast the error as localized error, so we have access to those 3 messages. And then you'll see below in the console, it prints out the description and the recovery suggestion. So that in and of itself may not look super useful, but you can do some cool things like this. Let's say we want to extend UI alert controller, and we want to have a initializer where we pass in a localized error. You can really slim down your code with this by taking the description and the recovery suggestion out of a localized error object, and then call the initializer on that to give yourself a UI alert view that has this information that's basically provided to you by the error. Okay, so custom NS error, we touched on a little bit. It's maybe not as cool as a localized error, but it does help out if you're using a Swift error object and you want to map back to NS error. Instead of having to like create a custom method to convert it on your own, you can just adhere to this protocol and provide these values. So that's pretty cool. And it's really helpful also if you're trying to parse user info on NS error, because you can just provide it, you can return it through that error user info dictionary. Here's an example of this, and it's super basic, but it gets the point across. So you have purchase error again, adhering to this protocol, and we're going to provide a domain of purchase error codes of 0 and 1, very original, and then the user info dictionary returns, in this case, a key of info with a value of a string describing itself. So, and then on the right, you'll see we're going to create the error object explicitly for this example. And this time we're saying that we needed $30 more to complete the purchase. And then you'll see that you're able to cast this to NS error seamlessly without having to inherit from it. So that's pretty nice. And then we'll just use debug print to get out all the great details of this. So it's a little less readable than localized error, but you'll see that it has the domain, the error code equal to 0, and then the user info that describes itself. So that's about that. So recoverable error is, like I said, pretty much only useful on Mac OS right now, but it's pretty slick because you can provide, it basically generates a alert controller for you, and it also creates like the buttons for you. So if you have a cancel button or a continue or what have you, you'll see in these methods like attempt recovery, there's this option index, and that's the index of the button they pick on the alert. And then you can have a result handler callback or completion block that you can execute arbitrary code based on the option they've chosen. So it's pretty powerful, and it's too bad we don't have it on iOS. You can make it work, but that would be a whole nother talk. But just to put it all together, I wanted to explain a little more because the visual is better. This is obviously Mac OS prompt, but the failure reason or error description could be either, and then recovery suggestion are like a title, subtitle in this case, and then recovery options, which goes back to that recoverable error protocol I just talked about, would be use password and cancel. So depending on what they tapped, there's like a Touch ID prompt. So if you have a delegate intercepting the tap of this and you get a option index of 0, you would see that it's use password. And if you get an index of 1, you'd see it's the cancel button, and you could handle that appropriately. But that's, maybe one day we'll get that on iOS, because that kind of generates this for you. But the other two protocols are still useful for us. So that's all I had for tonight. This was a short talk, but any questions?
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. Yeah, again, if you guys have any questions, click on the yes button and we can unmute you. So, you guys can ask.
Or post in the chat.
Or there.
So John, you alluded to the last one was for Mac OS errors, but like the first two protocols that you talked about, can you like describe which scenarios would be appropriate to use one or the other?
Sure. Yeah. So the first one, localized error, I think personally you should try to always implement this, because unless it's just a truly low-level developer-facing error only, maybe you don't use it. But I think for especially anything user-facing, you should implement localized error. Also because it should, I mean, the name is in it, localized, so it should also provide translations, which is great for the messaging. And then for custom NS error, we also tend to use this as much as possible, but if you don't deal with NS error often in your code, then it's not as necessary. But for those who parse through NS error properties, that's when it can become really useful, especially if you're converting between error and NS error type.
And I think Nick had a question too.
Yeah, so I'm new to iOS, so when I don't want, so can you explain the keyword like retro for me?
Sorry, what was the last part, the keyword?
Yeah, the keyword retro. So throw versus retro. Yeah, I don't understand the retro keyword.
Oh yeah, I haven't used that much. Someone help me out if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it just bubbles the error up to the next level without having to handle it.
Yeah, it's essentially a second level throw. So you're saying if you catch, instead of you throwing it in that class, you're throwing it up to the next one. You don't see it in Swift as often. I think you're probably more likely to see it if you do a lot of Java or Java or probably Kotlin or some of those languages, C#. But I don't think Swift tends to rethrow as much. You tend to throw and catch at the source of the exception.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Like even in my time using Swift, I don't think I've ever actually had to use rethrow, right? Like I've thrown again. Like when you get it in a throwing method, like you can just throw, but I never used actually rethrow as a term.
Yeah, same here actually.
Michael had some. Let's unmute him.
Hey, so rethrows I've used, and I think really the only way that it's intended to be used is when you are writing a function that accepts a closure, and you want to provide that closure the ability to be a throwing closure. It basically ties together the errors from that closure and allows you to bubble them up to the next context. So it's like one of the primary examples is if you've ever used the map function, you can pass a closure to map that has like tries in it, like it throws errors. And then the map function doesn't actually handle any of those errors. It just rethrows them up the chain a little bit. So you can then catch the error outside of the map function in like an outer context, for example. So it's really useful if you're like a library developer or something like that, or you're making those kind of higher order functions where you want to give people the flexibility of, you can provide a throwing function here if you want to, and rethrows basically is only considered a throwing function if the closure throws. If it doesn't, then it's not. So it's sort of like a way to provide opt-in behavior.
Yeah, I never got the chance to actually use that, but it might become a new tool in my belt. But that definitely does sound like a good September topic, Michael. Lightning talk maybe, so think about it. Did anyone else have any questions or anything more on a rethrow? No? Cool. Well, as I said before, we do need a speaker for September. Some other things to keep in mind is that we do have our Twitter page. So please go follow us on there for more talks that are coming up in the future, as well as our meetup page. But we'll post all of them on Twitter as well if this is where you're most active. Other than that, do check out 360 iDev. It's happening, we said, October 16th through 19th. They have some great presenters coming up. Rui is one of them. And tickets are $200, but you can do the online attendee, or like pay whatever you can. We'll put $0 if you want, but it's definitely going to some good causes too. So definitely recommend putting in something, but it's affordable and easy to join. Whether you can, it's easy to get to since virtual, but it's also affordable for everyone compared to previous years. So like I said, no excuse not to come. And also we do have our YouTube channel where we post stuff not just from DC iOS, but from the other dev community meetups, such as DC Flutter, DC Android, and a bunch of other DC community meetups we have out there. So great place to go back, reference to. And Scott, what were you gonna say?
I think it's technically Android 11 now. They rebranded.
Oh, they rebranded it, yeah. So it was a DCI Android 11. Are they gonna keep rebranding every so often? Well, I'm surprised they're not doing candy names. They're trying to copy iOS now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I posted the links to the Twitter and the YouTube page there. So yeah, this video will probably be up by the end of the week. Also, if we get 11 or more subscribers, we can actually rename our channel so it's not that ugly string of characters. So you help us out, you'll get quicker access to our videos and make it easier for you to remember.
Yeah, and for those of you who commented on the having the little what's it called, background there with the stuff, that's a new app that I'm trying out. It's an onomatopoeia called 2 M's H and then 2 M's again. I think we need to change the name because it's hard telling that to people every so often. But it's a pretty cool presentation. It links to your Zoom. The beta is out for it, and actually I can bring up the website for it. So it's app.com. But really cool way to get presentations and whatnot. I'll be doing it for my 360 iDev talk as well to make it a little bit more interactive. And in the kind of the world that we're living in now, this is a really cool little app to meet virtually, I guess. Yeah. So it lets you do in the back, kind of like a weatherman. You can, go around and point to things if you need to. Yeah, like that. You can make yourself large, the main speaker. You can go full Star Wars mode if you need to, like do the little, what do they call that? The
Hologram.
hologram. Thank you. And then, yeah, they have the full screen version as well. If you need to do like a full screen slide or whatever, and still hide yourself in the bottom, so you can give your talk. I'm a really big fan of it. Been playing around with it for a while, so yeah, I saw there's some curiosity there, but that's what it is.
Is it its own camera on Zoom?
Yeah, so that's how it works. It actually it streams locally on your computer, so it shows up as a third or like another option for a camera on Zoom. So that's how it links to Zoom, right?
Cool.
Yeah, but yeah, really big fan. Been using it with all my coworkers today. I think I just got it recently, so I've been using it like crazy.
Yeah, and I've been playing with it for the last hour, basically, while we've been here. So
yeah, yeah. I think once you're on, we do get a free invite per day. So if you guys do have interest in it, shoot us a message on DCiOS, and we can send you an invite code. We're limited to one a day, so first come first serve, and we can spread exponentially from there since everyone always gets one every day. Yeah. Other than that, I think that's it. John, yeah, I'll send you one, John. No problem. Tomorrow, remind me, because tomorrow I got a free one.
Okay.
And I think Scott has as well. So if I don't, I think we gotta give one to Johnny as well. He asked me, but yeah, either way, we'll share it around. Yeah, that's all I had. So thanks everyone again for joining us. Hopefully we should have some lined up for September again. So we'll keep this going next month, and then definitely we'll have it in October. So with our October one, Craig Clayton, I think I mentioned him before. He's also a author, and he has a new book coming out on Swift UI. So we're hoping we can get our hand on that digital copy or a few of them before or just after they're released, and then we'll raffle them off here at DCiOS. So fingers crossed it's published by then. If not, we'll try and get it out later, but definitely want that for some of our attendees here. So thanks again, and like I said, hopefully see everyone again next month.
thanks for coming.